Ecumenism is a movement that is geared towards rediscovering the unity of the church. So its presupposition is that there's not one historical church in history. The church became divided, and so we must find and seek and discover the church at the end of some praxeological dialectical journey. Literally, that's it. Now, ecumenical councils, that's not the same thing, right? That's when the church gets together in councils in the Middle Ages, the first 1,000 years of the church, and they would have debates about what was true and what was false, right? The ecumenical movement is a heavily funded, State Department aided project that the Rockefellers, for example, put a bunch of money into. And we'll talk a little bit about yoga because somebody put up a good Orthodox video about yoga. And it actually was very accurate because it went into the history of Swami Vivekananda attending the World Parliament of Religions in the late 1800s, which is where the ecumenist movement got its birth, the modern ecumenist heterodox movement. So we're not talking about, can my Catholic friend come to church with me at the Orthodox Church? We're not talking about, can, I go to a seminar at a Baptist church where they're teaching creation stuff. You can get blessings for those kinds of things, sure. What we're talking about is, can we have joint theological commissions, statements, and meetings that imply that there is no historical church, that's the one true church, or that the church is in process of self-discovery? Those are all politically, geopolitically utilized tools that are very easy to demonstrate. We've done, I don't know how many podcasts on that topic over the last 10 years. You can find them in the archives. So we're not going to talk about all that tonight, but that's what ecumenism is. And so for Orthodoxy, ecumenism ends up being something that violates the canons and what limits us as Orthodox Christians. For example, I can't go to a Baptist service and partake of their Welch's grape juice and cracker communion, right? That would be a violation of the ancient canons that say that Orthodox cannot participate in the worship of schismatics and heretics, okay? So that's an example. Yes, the Baha'i Faith does relate to this because the Baha'i Faith is a organization that was set up under the influence of people like Blavatsky and Theosophists and Perennialists to kind of create a syncretized synthesis religion. So it would be a version of a hyper-ecumenist type of religion. But typically, ecumenism is what we mean in the Christian domain of participating in not just dialogue and debate, but in fact, they eschew the idea of debate. And they talk about dialoguing to consensus. So it's more of a Hegelian process philosophy. And a lot of the ecumenists have actually underlying their thought, Hegelian process philosophy. And notice, none of this is in the first 1,000 years of the church. No church fathers teach anything like this. And as I said the other day, it's interesting that whether it's Scam Shamu and his version of ecumenist apostolic Christianity, which he made up for his grift, or whether it's Gavin Ortlund and his dad's made-up version of Mere Christianity, C.S. Lewis style. None of these people will ever tell you, and this is why everybody becomes Orthodox when they get into this, that the first 1,000 years of Christianity, nobody teaches that. That is a made-up doctrine that you could really probably trace to Anglican branch theory. So branch theory came about because the Anglicans needed a way to say, well, how could we have an idea of apostolic succession or doctrinal succession and a continuity with the ancient church, but not fall into the idea of 1,000 different radical Reformation schisms? Well, branch theory. Jesus has one church, but that church is split into a bunch of branches: Roman Catholic, Anglican, Orthodox, and then perhaps Lutheran, Presbyterian. There's no clear cutoff. So you see that it doesn't get you anywhere. It's just another version of heterodox ecclesiology, as if there's many Jesuses. Remember, all the arguments about ecclesiology reflect back on Christology, because ecclesiology, as the body of Christ, is the outworking of Christology. So if you think there's a bunch of different churches that are all in schism, then there's not one visible body. If there's not one visible body, then Jesus is not one visible body. So you see the logical, and the reason that none of these people get this right is because they're not in the church. It's that simple. They're in a made-up, man-made church. Man-made churches, even if they have 20% true doctrine, 50% true doctrine, 80% true doctrine, they're not the church. because it only takes one heresy to remove you from the church, right? Imagine if you were at the Council of Nicaea or at Constantinople I, you're reading the creed and you said, oh, I believe all these things. I don't believe in one holy Catholic Apostolic Church. And that's what all of these people deny. And I know because I used to be a Calvinist. And when I was a Calvinist, when we would read that in the creed, I would say, oh, that doesn't mean a public visible church. And it's not talking about one baptism, baptismal regeneration. It's spiritual. So I would reword and reinterpret the creed. Guess what? Gavin Ortlund and all the heretics do the exact same thing. Their whole system is premised on getting you to not become Orthodox, saying the Orthodox are evil, dangerous extremists. That's what he's implying here. Everybody knows he's talking about us. And of course, he's pretending like that's why they do this a passive aggressive thing. They don't even have the balls to say who they're talking about. They're so cowardly. They won't actually just say me. And again, why are you so mean to them? You're just mean out of nowhere. No. This is over, what, 2 years now? Year and a half of politely, not just publicly, but behind the scenes, talking to multiple people about having a dialogue or a debate with Wes Huff, for example. Thank you. And part of the reason for this is because many of the peoples in these people's orbits have become Orthodox. So they want to facilitate discussion and dialogue. I'm talking about a lot of their people. If a lot of their best friends and coworkers are becoming Orthodox, in the case of Wes Huff, Ruslan, many of them. I don't know much about Gavin Ortlund's orbit. I'm not on Grindr, so I couldn't say. But many of the people's orbit that are around these people have become Orthodox. And then people try to facilitate friendly discussions or debates, and they don't want to do any of it. Nobody thinks it's odd that Wes Huff immediately debates the most ridiculous idiot scammer person on the internet, Billy Corson, who says the most ridiculous stuff, knocks down the lowest hanging fruit imaginable, and then will not ever discuss or debate any of his other positions with anyone else. In fact, he goes on Andrew Schultz, the comedian, and Andrew Schultz asks him one very simple question. What about the Orthodox? They got a pretty ancient historic church. And he's like freaking out. Remember that? Now, Wes Huff is always talking about, like, he lifts and he's benching and he's like this buff dude. A lot of buff dudes, by the way, are not actually tough dudes. They're mentally soft. You could be buff as hell and be at the damn gay bar. A lot of that buff weightlifting stuff is gay too, by the way, if you didn't know that. I'm not saying Wes Huff is gay. I know these guys are married. By the way, you could be married and be gay too, by the way. But the actions are faking gay. They don't actually want to stand up for the things that they're so morally superior about. If you're so superior morally, number one, you would call your dad out, Gavin Ortlund, for co-ministering with a dude that's pro-gay in terms of his ministries. Where is that call out? And did you call your dad out for supporting pro-trans, pro-abortion politicians like Kamala? Did you do any of that? No, but the ortho bros, they got to be called out because they're aggressive online and some of them say 4-letter words. So notice that evangelicalism, as I argued on the 4th Hour of Alex Jones, is not just a performative piety signaling thing. It's actually almost always some voice of the State Department or an NGO. They are beholden to their donors, just like a corporation is beholden to the shareholders. And their money will dry up if they don't keep pushing the government approved or the Democratic Party approved or whatever element or outfit that they're connected to. And by the way, people were saying that Ruslan, I had no idea this was this crazy. People were saying that Ruslan was laughing when the strikes on Gaza happened, which is just crazy to me. Like, remember when he said the other day to me, he says, I don't care about what's happening in geopolitics. I don't care about none of that. Wars. I don't care about Epstein and none of that. I don't care about Christian Zionism. You don't care about the biggest heresy in America? So that tells you guys everything. Now, I've not confirmed that because I've not seen the tweet or the video, but people are saying that when the strikes were happening, Ruslan was laughing about it. Like that's a laughing matter. I mean, these people are actually sick. Now, if somebody said, "Why'd you go on Ruslan?" First of all, I didn't know any of this stuff. I don't do deep dives into every podcaster's background I go on. If I did that, I probably couldn't go on anybody's podcast, right? But in this case, and by the way, I didn't just go on there because Ruslan wanted to talk to me about my book. We had a 2-hour debate, and I didn't know he was going to do that, but I don't have a problem doing that. By the way, notice he had no problem springing a 2-hour debate on me, but now they're all up in arms about how dare you challenge people publicly to a debate? How dare you? How dare you? Again, this is like after almost 2 years of beefing with and having to deal with all the passive aggressive bullcrap from these people, man. It is so easy to set up a debate with me. It can be on Crucible. It could be on Modern Day Debate. It could be on all kinds of platforms. It doesn't have to be on Ruslan's platform. He just made up nonsense that I'm mad because I couldn't go on his platform. That's not even true. He said in the past he would have me back on. There was no, I'm not invited on the platform. He made that up. Just totally made up. That's why I said we can just debate on anybody's channel, a small channel. Pick a small channel, I'll debate you. Modern Day Debate is smaller than Ruslan's channel. We'll debate there. And then he says, "Oh, you must publicly repent before I'll debate." Now, again, everybody's doing the same move. It's the same bullcrap that Lofton did in 2018. I'll debate you, maybe in writing. He said in writing. Give me a break, dude. But you got to publicly repent to my satisfaction. I got to confess my sins to you. I thought you didn't believe in priests. You say, "Oh, priesthood of all believers." Oh, but you're not the high priest that I got to confess my sins to. None of it makes any sense, dude. There's absolutely no consistency. And, the only exchange that I even saw was like Gavin Ortland and Father Stephen DeYoung, right? And then Gavin Ortland says, "I will never debate again unless they have credentials. Unless they have credentials." Well, the catechumen that you debated didn't have credentials. It wasn't a debate. We changed the title of it. Well, how come Trent Horn had in the title of his video, debate? Oh, did you tell Trent Horn to change the title of it, that it wasn't a debate? You bunch of liars. So you got called out. That's the only reason you changed it, because of pushback, and you blamed it on your staff. And the way we know that that's probably not true is that Trent Horn put the title of the three-way discussion as debate. Did Ruslan say, "Oh, Trent, change that title"? And by the way, who's so freaking gay that they're scared of just using the word debate? This is so ridiculous. What's the point? These people are on the run. Band on the run. Band on the run. Look. Why are they on the run? Ruslan flexing his channel in my face. Dude, you're on the downturn. You're the red. This is me versus you on YouTube in 5 years. Let's look at web search. Oh, Ruslan, KD, not very high, dog. That's why he's the Christian TMZ now, right? Anyway, we're moving on from Ruslan. We're going to talk about, again, there's no reason why. And by the way, we tried for a long time to set up with debates with these people. So the idea that I just out of nowhere just decide, oh, he just attacks people for no reason. No, we've tried being nice with you people. We've tried to be super friendly, super peaceful, multiple mutual friends, trying to set up all kinds of discussions with you guys. And by the way, if we try to do that, you then say that we just want clout and we're clout goblins trying to get to your audience and get clout from you. Again, I don't need Ruslan's clout. I'm blowing his clout away. Same with Mohammed Hijab, that fraud. Blowing him away in the last 2 years on Twitter and web search. And so his clout argument doesn't hold anymore. And who knows if he even bought those followers on X. He had an X account with 1 million followers a long time ago. He could have bought all that shit. And the metrics on Google show that he's not as popular as he claims to be. And then he copyright strikes when he loses a debate with Avery. So please explain to me how I'm bad for calling out this stuff when, for example, Christianity Today ran a month of ads for a gay-affirming podcast. connected to Andy Stanley's church. I don't even know who any of these gay evangelicals even are. Check this out.
This episode is brought to you in part by Brian Nitzel and his new podcast, Making Things Right, which is an invitation for the church to restore faith in the LGBTQ plus community. You might be a parent or a friend of an LGBTQ plus individual, trying to reconcile your love for them and your beliefs. You may be a church leader looking for better ways to navigate. For anyone weary of the debate.
And again, this is the guy married to a guy. So none of this bullshit that, well, this is helping them to become straight. No, it's not. This is engineered to try to change the moral teachings of the church to make it affirming of all this stuff. Is he married to a man? Let's see. Gay man with a husband scheduled to speak at Christianity Today associated promoted conferences. Now, everybody in our sphere, like, we knew this a long time ago. And as soon as I came into Orthodoxy, I started calling out ancient faith for doing the exact same thing. And what did they do? They spent 6 months attacking me as a bad person for calling it out, and then eventually having to admit that, no, he was actually correct. This woman, Charlotte Riggle, was promoting the most heinous stuff to kids, and they were featuring her at their conference. So again, they think you're dumb. They see you as a market. They market all this crap to you, and then they subtly nudge you in the direction of accepting all this butt stuff. You got, I mean, I can't even believe they're running ads for this gay stuff on the Christianity Today podcast. Actually, I can't believe it, right? And almost all the speakers at these conferences, let's take a look. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 of 11 speakers are pro Skittles. And they think you're dumb. They just think the audience is a bunch of retards that we can grift off of. And Ruslan even says that to you, and you all still defend Ruslan because you're dumb. Oh, but did Jay say a 4-letter word? Uh-oh. Yeah, that's the real moral crux here. Again, straining at gnats, swallowing camels. Do y'all not know what that means? Jesus is talking about the people who hyperfixate on minutia so that they can be better than people. Meanwhile, they over here hating people in their hearts, murdering, doing butt stuff that's 10 times worse than, did you fast this week? Or, did you say a 4-letter word when you were stuck in a traffic jam, right? It's just ridiculous. And by the way, these entities, all of these evangelical entities and these fake and gay churches, they are themselves atheism engines. They're atheism factories. And how many people have come to Orthodoxy and said, I was an atheist for 10 years, 20 years because of this evangelical nonsense?